Today I want to share with you guys one of my favorite recipes, and that's beef stroganoff. So let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Heartway Farms. I'm so glad you're here with me today. You guys have told me how much you are enjoying this cooking from your stockpile series, and so today we're doing another one of those videos. Everything that I'm cooking with today I keep in my root cellar or in my pantry or in my freezer, and so I just want to share this idea with all of you in case you need a new idea for dinner time. Today's recipe is from my mother-in-law, and it is a family favorite on her side of the family, and I got introduced to it. I never liked beef stroganoff until I tried this recipe, and now it's one of my favorite go-to recipes. So everything that I'm going to share today is actually a double recipe because I have 8 people in my family and there's a lot of people to feed. So it's easy enough. If you want to make a single, just cut everything in half today and it'll work out just fine for you. So let's get started. One of the things that we keep in our storage stockpile of food, of course, we keep pasta and noodles and that sort of thing. And so for this recipe, I need some extra wide egg noodles. So I bought this last time we did a stock up from Gordon Food Service, GFS, and now that I'm opening this today, I will divvy this up into half-gallon mason jars and put an oxygen absorber in there and go put them in the root cellar, and it's easy and they're done and perfect. But today I've got my Lodge Dutch oven going here and I've got it full of water and it's boiling, and I'm gonna go ahead and get my noodles cooked and out of the way, and then we'll get started on the sauce. So for this recipe I'm probably gonna use about 2 pounds of noodles because I'm doubling the recipe. Okay, so our noodles are cooking and we're gonna get 2 things done at once here, and so I'm gonna go ahead and cut up my beef so that I can get it ready. I pre-cook the meat and set it aside before we move on to the sauce. And for this recipe, I'm using 2 pounds of beef, and I'm actually using ribeye steak, but you can use all sorts of things for this. You can use sirloin, you can use ground if you wanna keep it cheap, you can use some stew meat or roast meat and just make sure that you tenderize it so it's nice and, you know, fall apart in your mouth type of a meal. You know, you want it to be nice and tasty. So you can use cheap meat for this, you can use expensive meat, depends what you have. If you got a quarter of a cow, you know, in your quarter of a steer in your freezer, this is a great recipe to go get beef out of the freezer and use for this. So step 1, like I said, I have about 2 pounds. I'm gonna cut this all up into bite-sized little cubes, okay? Okay, so our beef is all chunked up into nice, like 1 inch by 1 inch bite-sized chunks, and now what I'm gonna do is coat it in some flour to give it a nice, good flavor texture when I'm frying it in the pan. Now, so I'm gonna take 1 cup of flour, give or take. I'll see if I need more. I'm gonna put just, you know, a pinch of salt in there. This is our Redmond's real salt, just to give some good flavor to the beef. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put our ribeye pieces in here. If you are using ground beef during, you know, for this recipe, or like a shredded type of beef that you stewed up or whatever, don't worry about this step. Just skip this step, go ahead and brown up your meat and set it aside because you're gonna need the drippings for making your sauce. All right, so we're gonna close up our bag, and now we're gonna coat the meat in flour. Give it a nice good coating. Okay, that looks good. Now we're gonna head over to the cast iron. All right, we're gonna turn on a large cast iron, get it nice and hot, and just in a minute we'll check back and we'll add some butter to this and saute up our meat. Before we make our sauce, our noodles are done. We're gonna go ahead and strain them and then set them aside. right, so our noodles are done. I rinsed them so they don't stick together, and I'm gonna just set them over here aside until we're ready for dinner. Okay, so that part is easy and done. Gotta love having easy, quick meals ready to go. All right, now we are going to go ahead and we've got our hot cast iron here. It's nice and hot, and we're gonna add about half a stick of butter here to cook up our meat. You want to kind of keep moving on this part because you don't want to burn your butter. A little bit of brown butter doesn't hurt anybody, but we'll get going. Okay, now we have, our meat that's sitting in here. I'm not going to dump this whole thing in here. I'm going to reach in here with my hands and get our coated pieces of meat and just put them in here and start browning the meat. All right, I'm going to flip this so that all sides get a nice crisp. I don't know, it's probably hard to see, but the flour coating gives it a nice little crisp coating on the outside, a nice fry on the outside. And so I'm gonna flip everything around. Honestly, this is the part that takes the longest, and it really doesn't even take that long. You can have this meal ready in 30 minutes easy, which is great for just last minute cooking plans, right? So I'm gonna flip these, let them finish cooking, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, our beef looks perfectly done. It's crispy on the outside. It's got a beautiful dark color. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove that from my cast iron because now we're gonna make the best sauce. All right, now most of the time, beef stroganoff has mushrooms in it, and I like mushrooms, Josh likes mushrooms, but several of the children do not like mushrooms. So we are going to leave the mushrooms out, and I tend to leave it out of this recipe all the time, but one thing I do like to do is chop up some fresh mushrooms and saute them in some butter, of course, some salt and pepper and garlic, and have that as a side dish, just in case anyone wants to put that into this recipe. But I am not including mushrooms in my recipe today because this is literally what I'm feeding my family for dinner. Okay, we are gonna set this aside over here, and now we're gonna move on to our sauce. Okay, so I'm gonna add about 6 more, because I'm doubling the recipe, I'm gonna add 6 more tablespoons to the pan to melt up. Okay, we're gonna let that melt. We're making a bit of a roux right now. So I'm gonna get my whisk out. And I'm keeping my heat up. I'm also getting all of that, all of the drippings from the beef incorporated in here with the butter, and getting all of that flavor into my sauce. Okay, once my butter is melted, I'm gonna add 6 tablespoons of flour. So I'm doing equal numbers of butter to flour, and I'm gonna make a roux here. So I'm gonna keep whisking while I add the flour. I'm gonna add it in little bits so it doesn't clump up on me too badly. Making a little roux or a paste. And seriously, you guys, if you never tried this, you can't go wrong with beef and butter and flour and all of the good seasoning. We're gonna use some beef consomme later, or beef broth, depending on what you have. And it tastes so good. It's such a yummy, rich sauce. We can add the rest of this. And this is where you get flexible. If when you get done, it's not really making much of a paste, you need to add a little bit more flour, okay? Or a little bit more butter. Just make it kind of a nice little paste, because as it heats, the flour will continue to thicken. So just be patient and watch it and see how it looks. Because it will, again, the more heat gets on that flour mixture, it will thicken up real nicely. All right, see how it's bubbling real nicely and it's thickening up, and it will continue to thicken. Okay, so right now we're gonna go ahead and add our beef consomme. I like to make this with the consomme because it's so rich, but you can use regular old beef broth if that's all that you have in your stockpile. I have both, but for this recipe, this is my preference. But it's no big deal if you only have beef broth, you can absolutely use that. So I'm gonna use for this recipe, because I'm doubling it, 2 cans of beef broth here. And then this is gonna take just a minute. I'm gonna get this all mixed in together and let it continue to thicken into a sauce. Okay, it looks awesome. Can you guys see and tell how thick it's getting? This is where you don't want to let it boil now that we're making the sauce now. You needed a hot pan before, but now you need just like a simmer type pan. And we're just gonna, because it'll turn hard as a rock if you're not careful. So this is all getting nice and thick and beautiful, and this is where we add the star of the show, our sour cream. And today I'm gonna be using Nancy's sour cream. I get this from Azure Standard. You guys, if you haven't seen my Azure Standard videos, make sure you go check them out. And I'm telling you, you guys, if you are in a season of life where you're not wanting to make homemade sour cream, you're gonna wanna try this Nancy sour cream and put that in your next order. All right, we're gonna add this whole thing because I'm making a double recipe. So this is 16 ounces of sour cream. This makes it a beautiful cream sauce. All right, now I'm just gonna mix this in carefully, and it'll make it a nice, beautiful color. Okay, so our sauce is coming together beautifully. If you're making up your sauce and you find that it's too thick for your liking, that's when it's so easy. All you have to do is add a little bit more beef broth or consomme to your sauce, or you can even add a little bit of milk if you want. If you find that your sauce is not thick enough, that's easy. Make another little bit of roux on the side, a little flour and butter mixture over on the side, and whisk it together and add that in, and then just continue to stir it until the sauce is the thickness that you would like. So my sauce looks beautiful, and now we're gonna add the meat back in. We're gonna give this a stir. And again, I'm keeping my sauce on very low heat until it's time to eat dinner. I'm not gonna let this boil. I'm not gonna let it get too hot again, because it will continue to thicken and you don't want it to be too thick. So there we go, we're mixing our meat in. And it was that easy. Dinner is done, you guys. We have a huge pot of noodles. We have a big old cast iron full of sauce, and we're ready to throw it together. I think Julian's gonna go pick some fresh greens and spinach from the garden. We're gonna wash up some fruit and call this dinner. All right, you guys, try this recipe out. Tell me how much you like it, because I know once you try, you're gonna be like, oh, I gotta make that beef stroganoff again. So yeah, give it a try, let me know, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to y'all soon.